Good morning. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Welcome to our Remembrance Day service. And I'm going to read about the ringing of the kansho. Ringing of the kansho signifies the start of the service. Please sit quietly. Please rise for the meditation, followed by the chanting in Pali and English of the Vandana Ti-Sarana. That can be found on page 165 of the Brown Book. Please be seated. We will now do an aspiration by Reverend Sumikawa.
The presence of Amida Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and all the Buddhas of the 10 directions to this remembrance service. Namu Amida. Fortunate are we who, upon having heard the divine truth and having been given everlasting life, may leave this human existence in peace and tranquility and be surrounded in Amida infinite wisdom and inconceivable compassion. We honor with deep gratitude the members, families, friends, and pets of the Windward Buddhist Temple who have passed away in the month of May. With deepest gratitude to the boundless, inconceivable blessings of Amida Buddha, we take eternal refuge in the three treasures of this teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda.
For today's remembrance service, we'll now have the remembrance of those who passed away this month from any year. Reverend Sumikawa will hit the daikin several times to start this portion of the service. I will announce the names of the deceased, and you can go forward and offer incense, correct? Harry Mineo Hiramoto. Satomi Takashiba. Reverend Yoshiaki Fujitani, David Inaba, Hideo Yanagisawa, and Glenn Yanagisawa.
kalpas to come, aid in times of suffering. May I not attain Buddhahood, I will reach enlightenment, but unless my Buddha name resounds throughout the universe, may I not attain Buddhahood, I will practice the noble path, wisely, mindfully, free of greed, seek to reach the supreme way, be a guide to one and all. May my power shine great light to illumine and dispel the darkness of the three poisons, and save all from suffering. With eyes of wisdom I'll remove the darkness of ignorance. I will close all evil paths, open gates of highest good. When I attain Buddhahood, light will shine throughout all lands, light brighter than sun and moon, outshining all heavenly lights, giving my virtues to all, not forsaking anyone. I will proclaim the Dharma like the roar of a great lion, bowing before all Buddhas, steadfastly gaining virtues, with wisdom fulfilling my vows. I shall be a guide to all, like the wisdom of my teacher. May my wisdom also shine all throughout the universe, and illumine one and all. If I shall fulfill these vows, may all lands tremble with joy. From the heavens wondrous flowers rain down upon all the lands. Amen, together Namandao is a Namandao, 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 Namandao.
Please turn to page 4 in the same red book for the Creed number 2. Casting off the self-power mind of the varied practices and disciplines.
We entrust
Trust ourselves mindedly to Amida Gatha to save us in regard to the great
moment of birth.
With one thought moment of entrusting, we know that we are saved and that our birth is settled.
After this, we say the name in joy and gratitude, repaying the Buddha's graciousness. We acknowledge gratefully that we are able to hear and understand this teaching because of the benevolence of our Master having appeared in this world and of the successes in the transmission, the good teachers whose words were not shallow. Beyond this, we will observe the established rules of conduct throughout our lives.
Namu.
Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Please continue to stand for the Gatha on page 104 in the Brown Book. Please be seated. Thank you. Today's Dharma talk, the speaker for this Remembrance Day service will be Dr. Sumikawa, Reverend Bert.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see all of you again, as usual. You know, about 5 years ago, in May of about 2017, my cousin from Ogden, Utah, called me to tell me that my uncle had passed away. Previous to that, when he was still alive, she called to say that he wanted me to do his graveside service. So I asked her if he was sure that he wanted me to do it, because, I'm a Buddhist and not a Christian like he was. As was his father, was my grandfather, actually, my maternal grandfather. So I decided to do an ecumenical one, or a non-denominational service, combining some Buddhist aspects with some Christians one as well. Don't tell the bishop, okay? So I started out reading from Ecclesiastes, one, a time for all seasons, followed by Bu Jo, with the one that we just did earlier, or the three respective callings. Then I read a slightly revised version of A Letter on White Ashes. And then the 23rd Psalm that I read from my mother's Bible. I still have her Bible. I don't have it with me anymore. I gave it to one of my sons. Then I ended up with the Nembutsu, and then read a well-known poem called A Thousand Winds. I explained that although the poem was credited to a Mary Fry, it was actually attributed to a Navajo burial prayer. And I read this because my uncle was a teacher at a Navajo school in Brigham City, Utah. He loved the outdoors so much so that one summer, he joined the faculty, and then every summer he would take his camper, drive down to Arizona, stopping at campsites along the way to rest and eat, make coffee, cowboy style, until he reached his destination. He would then register the children, and later a bus would go and pick them up and drive them to Utah. But in reading about these boarding schools recently, many of the church-related schools were quite abusive, and I think many of you may have read it. And they found, as they're still finding many, many graves of these dead children. But the school that my uncle taught in was actually part of the public health service. And as you may know, at the time, the public health service was in charge of the Coast Guard and what they call the Indian services as well. So hopefully he wasn't part of the abusive group. But although it was May, the mountaintops were all still covered with snow. It was beautiful. No wonder Joseph Smith said, "This is the place," and built his Mormon church there. Anyway, rejoin me by putting your hands together in kansho. Beams of light, 3,600,000 billion in number, shine brightly from within each flower. There is no place they do not reach. Namu Amida. Namanda. Well, this wasang, or song, is from Shinran's Hymn of the Pure Land, and it's a metaphor for the vast network of interdependence and interconnection that is our life. So we're well into the month of May, and this is the month of excitement and gaiety as well in many households, right? As children plan their graduation and the parties that follow these exercises, and the thought of children leaving their homes to go off in faraway places to continue their study. I'm looking at her right now. Many parents develop this so-called empty nest syndrome, and you went through it last year as well. We're so used to having our children in our homes, watching and nurturing them in their growing years, wondering at times what it would be like to have peace and quiet at home. But when they finally leave the nest and go off, there may appear a deep sense of abandonment, so to speak. And they thinking about it, things will never be the same again. Even when they return home for the holidays, there is a change. Maybe not only in them, but with the parents as well, as everything continues to evolve. According to Buddhism, constant change, flux, and impermanence are the very basis of life. Our life is a series of micro moments that we never notice because the shortest unit of time, the 1/60th of the time it takes to snap your fingers, cannot be seen by the naked eye. It is as though we are entrenched by an old movie unfolding on the screen, unaware that each frame that makes up the film is separate and distinct. On the screen of life, we assume continuity, but the reality is that the film can stop at any frame and freeze at any instant. The changes from frame to frame in a continuum is an illusion. There is a story of a young Zen monk who was traveling from monastery to monastery in medieval China. When he comes to this rest stop for a refreshing cup of tea, a little old woman comes out to serve him and notices that he has a diamond sutra in his hand. So recalling a famous passage from the sutra, she quotes, "The past mind cannot be grasped, and the present mind cannot be grasped." And then she asks, "Sir, which mind do you want to refresh?" Unable to answer, the monk burned his books and began a serious quest for the Zen attainment. Tai Uno, in his book, Shin Buddhism, writes that what is past has disappeared and cannot be grasped. The future has yet to come and cannot be grasped. And the present eludes our grasp, because the moment we try to get a hold of it, it's already gone. The living moment here and now demands our immediate and fullest attention. No longer concerned with the past, whether to be celebrated or regretted, nor with the future, whether to be anticipated with the hope of or apprehension. One lives fully in the present. Therefore, this chronological present is also a present, a gift that must be opened so that its rich content may be savored. This moment differs in contrast to the Latin phrase de brevitate vitae, shortness of life, right? More commonly known as gaudiamus igitur. Do any of you remember the movie Student Prince? Nobody? You mean I'm that the only one? I was in college then. Some of you surely must have been in college then too. Anyway, this song, it was a graduation song, singing the joys of a youthful life and looking forward to old age where the earth waits for your bones. And the more familiar, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. You remember the song, Gaudiamus igitur? Gaudiamus igitur, juvenes dum sumu. You remember the song, yeah, you remember the song. Quite a number of years ago, stores in Hawaii and the mainland sold coffee mugs with the phrase carpe diem, a phrase that comes from the Roman poet Horace. It means literally, pluck the day, though it's usually translated as seize the day. A free translation might be, enjoy yourself while you have a chance. For some people, carpe diem serves as the closest thing to a philosophy of life that they'll ever have. Seize the day, put very little trust in tomorrow or the future. The song says that the future is unforeseen and that one should not leave to chance future happenings, but rather one should do all one can do today to make one's future better. This phrase is usually understood against Horace, the famous Roman poet with his background in Greek philosophy. The meaning of carpe diem, as used by Horace, is not to ignore the future, but rather not to trust that everything is going to fall into place for you, and to take action for the future today. Carpe diem, the closest phrase to ichigo ichie that we have, which literally means one time, one meeting, or once in a lifetime encounter. It means that you should cherish each encounter as if it were a once in a lifetime occurrence. Treat every meeting like it is the first and the last, and enjoy every encounter to the fullest, because it may not come to you again. Each moment is precious and unrepeatable. Ichigo ichie, a Buddhist phrase that is steeped in the Japanese tea ceremony. For those parents and guardians of future generations of high school graduates who may eagerly wait the day when they will board a jet plane and head to eastern shores, to schools that may be unknown to us right now. Continue to live a life of ichigo ichie. Live with your children each and every day as if it were the last day. Each day, as you greet your children in the morning, is a new encounter. And as you bid them good night in the evening, it's a precious moment, never the same as the last. There's a Japanese saying, Sen ri do fu. Sen ri do fu. If I can find it, I will show it to you. Where is it? Okay, it's right here. Sen ri do fu. It's a 1,000 village or 1,000 parents' home. 1,000 parents' home equal the breeze. 1,000 parents' home equal the breeze. The idea is that what is, even though 1,000 miles that may separate us, we can still enjoy the same breeze. Even though we may be separated by thousands of miles, countries, or cultures, we can still enjoy the same breeze of life, of love, humanity, and Nembutsu. And it can all begin through a very simple gesture, a very simple greeting, a simple acknowledgement that we are all enjoying this difficult to receive human life. This is the heart of Namu Amida Butsu, and it's taught to us in the simple story of the Bodhisattva Dhammakara. In his attempt to become a Buddha, makes a vow to travel and see all the many different Buddha lands and Buddhas so that he can select the features that are the most perfect for him and exquisite to be included in this land. This is summarized in the Sutra Sambutsuge that we chant very often in our services. Even though there are countless Buddhas, 1,000 million more in number, and multitudes of great sages, immeasurable as the sand along the Ganges River, I shall go and visit and greet and make offerings to all these Buddhas and continue to seek the path resolutely and determinedly without any rest. As the Buddha reminds us, let's continue to try to make that human-to-human connection with each other by a simple greeting of hello, aloha, konnichiwa, ni hao ma, namo amida butsu. Years ago, when I was a freshman college student, a dorm neighbor invited me to spend the Easter holidays with he and his family in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It was in March, very cold and snowy. As it was wet and the ground was full of snow, they asked me to remove my shoes upon entering the foyer. My friend's mother brought my shoes into the house and looked at the bottom of it. It had a rather large hole in it. I mean, I could have gone downtown Milwaukee to buy a new pair, but it was so cold in the winter that, I didn't want to venture too far away from school just to buy a pair of shoes. Anyway, because my friend's father owned a shoe store in that little town. What town was that? Escanaba. One day he brought me down to his store, sized my feet, and gave me 2 pairs of brand new shoes. I was so shocked and happy. I thanked him for it at the time. However, when I got back to the dorm, I had every intention of writing to them to thank them once again, but I never got to it. Similarly, I remember a couple years ago, I related to you a story about whose mother baked me a whole box of cookies, homemade cookies. She was from Iowa, and I never wrote to thank her. Well, I didn't, and I regretted it to this very day. Both the shoe store owner and the lady who baked me the cookies are now long gone. Someone told me that I should write a posthumous letter to both of them to thank them, and so I did. Shinran Shonin wrote the following verse in Shoshinge. The person burdened with extreme evil should simply say the name. Although I too am within Amida's grasp, passions obstruct my eyes and I cannot see the light. Nevertheless, great compassion is untiring and illumines me always. Namu Amida Butsu. Well, on a side note, though, speaking of posthumous letters, I once did a memorial service for this family while I was a resident minister at Moiliili. And one of the elderly attendees remarked to me that he used to go there a long time ago for services, and he remembered Reverend Makino. So he asked me, he says, when I die, I want Reverend Makino to do my funeral service, he said. He said, and I want him to make a good Makeman name for him. He said he wants a long Makeman name, and not the short one that we do with only 2 kanji characters. So I told him, well, if you want a long Makeman name, then you better become a bonsan. Or go to the temple and be a president and do many, many, many things for the temple, and maybe then you can get a good long Makeman name. He said, oh, too late for me now, I'm too old already. Well, you know, our minds are compared to monkey chatter, endlessly filled with compulsive thoughts and insatiable cravings. We are like white mice in a cage, endlessly going around in the exercise wheel. If we do not correct this, if we continue to live in self-centeredness and delusion, it will eventually blow up. But as we begin to live the life of Nembutsu, to live simply in the Nembutsu as Shinran Shonin admonishes us, our gases, G-A-S, greed, anger, stupidity or unawareness are released slowly but surely. So, thank you very much for coming to this temple today. Thank you very much for listening. As when we awaken ourselves to the pure mind of Amida Buddha, we transcend the challenges that faces us. So again, let's all release our gases, our 3 poisons, and live a life of contentment, gratitude, and appreciation in the Nembutsu. Thank you for listening. Let's put our hands together once again. We do not always have a choice with many things in our lives, and we cannot choose to avoid suffering in our lives, but the one thing we can choose is how we view our life and to see the world as it truly is. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Bert. I just Googled on maps where the Escanaba is. That's way up there on the UP. Wow, in Michigan, that is something else. And by the way, speaking of college and our kids going off to school, my daughter Bryn is coming back after finals, and she's bringing her boyfriend. Never been to Hawaii, never been to Buddhist Temple, so I hope he comes to join us. Liam from Boston area. So, please rise for the Gatha at our Quest of Life on page 126 in the Brown Book.
Listen to the voice of the Dharma. Listen to the birds singing in the morning, the wind sighing in the boughs overhead, and the roar of the waves on the beach. Listen to the Nembutsu and the Hondo. Listen to the noble silence of the Buddha. Namu Amida. Namu Amida.
Thank you very much. See if there's any announcements today from Prudence. Thank you.
Good morning. It's nice to see everybody again. And we have a guest. Lisa's mom is here, Sharon Harada. She's sitting right there. You're back for Wyatt's graduation, I bet. Yeah, great. Thank you, Reverend, for your interesting talk. Oh, you naughty boy sometimes. Just like me. I know sometimes you say, I better write the thank you letter. And before you know it, time goes by. Okay. Thanks to our volunteers today, Linda for being our MC, Lisa for playing the piano, and Dana and her team for our refreshments. I have just a few announcements. Next week, we're going to introduce to you the members, as Reverend had told us last week, who have been practicing to be certified as ministers' lay assistants so that in the absence of a minister, they can conduct the Sunday family services. Now, this group will conduct the service under Reverend's guidance next week. So I hope a lot of you would come because I think there'll be 4 of us up here. And so it'll be interesting, you know. And then next week, too, we're going to honor our high school graduate, Wyatt. He will be here. And so it'll be a treat. So we'll see Wyatt, and you'll hear us aspiring ministers, lay assistants. Okay, I think there's an announcement that Dennis has regarding our Obon coming up. So Dennis?
Good morning, everyone. Merle wasn't feeling good this morning, so I'm filling in for her. But she created a sign-up sheet for the Bon Dance for all the different food items, from Spam to soda to whatever. So, but also there's a sign-up for any volunteers that can help preparing food the Friday before, as well as Saturday, and then of course the Saturday night, the times during the Bon Dance. So I'll leave it on that front table there, and you're welcome to look through it, and it'll be here the next several Sundays. So if you can sign up, great. If not, you know, maybe next week you can take a look at it again. Thanks.
Yes, after a couple of years without Bon Dance, we're going to have our live Bon Dance. So we look forward to that. Okay, before we go to the next room for refreshments, and again, as before, it's takeaway, so those of you that don't want to stay, please take a bag with you. I think we anticipated a lot more than we have today, so you got to take some home. Okay, let's do words of thanksgiving. It's found in the little red book on page 126. We are truly grateful for this wonderful food, a gift of life. May we share its benefits with all beings. As we partake of this food, let us remember Amida Buddha's compassion, which surrounds all people and all forms of life. Namu Amida Butsu. Itadakimasu. Thank you. We'll see you next week.